Hey everyone, this is Dr. Coach K, and I'm with Umoji. You can check us out at www.umojienergy.com. And today's topic is about the prison complex and mass incarceration with school to prison pipeline. So, why are we talking about this? It's because we know that all over the world there have been conflict, whether in war, right, or whether in day to day, face to face, domestic, family conflict, violence, poverty, uh, trying to find education, the right lifestyle, conflict everywhere. Well, the conflict we're going to zoom in on is the prison to poverty pipeline, as well as the school to prison pipeline. What does that mean when I say things as the mass incarceration? We know that there is a huge theory right now going out there about punishment, penalty and punishment, and the whole ideology around tough on crime. And what does that truly mean? As a academic, scholarly practitioner, I've learned as a student that you can learn about conflict and how people respond to conflict or react to conflict. But when you talk about authority or power, it changes the game. You're on another level of response and reaction to conflict because now you have power and domination in that process, where before it's face to face. Like when you come to a person, they do face to face, word for word. But then when somebody brings a weapon, that becomes uneven or not equal playground, right? So that's similar to power and privilege in regards to conflict. When you're on the same playing field, it's like conversation to conversation. But then when you change the playground and you bring weapons, it becomes conflict versus weapons and so forth. And so when you add in the element of prison, you're talking about isolation, alienation, and lockdown and captivity, right? Imprisonment. And what we have examined, the mathematics, which is what you mean by problem solving. Well, problem solving as to mathematics means how do you solve this problem when you have people that comes into power that agrees to hold over the population. Usually it's poor people, poor people who don't have the ability to pay for their crime or pay to excuse their crime. Okay, so you have very few people that pay for their crime in prison that are rich and famous. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying they have very few and far apart, that their sentencing is based on sitting in a prison cell. So, how do you remove this conflict or resolve this problem, solve this problem, right? In math, you would think, equality mathematics. If it happens to you, it happens to everybody else. But that's not the case because we live in human error. And so, what our goal is, as in Umoji, when we work with reentry adults, is to develop leadership skills, build teams, okay, build ownership, build sovereignty, and build, unification, solidarity, so that we can solve the problem of mass incarceration through changing the shift or the paradigm shift, changing the way we interact with the system. And so, one of the ways that we change or transform the way we interact with the system is building our own community and building within that community where it becomes a universe. And so, like similar systems like the Quakers and the Amish, you have communities that have been successful, and then you have communities that have not been successful to detach from their what we call problematic system or conflict of a system. The goal isn't to like jump off the planet and be an island by yourself. The goal is how to transcend, how to be a ascending master. How do you be masterful with your strategy, your decision making on a day-to-day basis, and how do you do it in a group? How do you do it across the board, right? The borders. So we want to examine one, mass incarceration. Like, what is it that people, human, gravitate towards penalty and punishment? What is the gratification? What is the pleasure? What is the satisfaction? What is the chemical compound that creates in the brain, in the human emotion, to want to use as a decision maker, use their power, use their privilege to choose power. I'm sorry, to use, sorry, to choose penalty and punishment over restoration of the community and resolution, right? Which is restorative justice. Restorative justice is a different type of justice. Criminal justice is penalty and punishment justice, right? So it's capital punishment. So we have to examine why is the humanity gravitate and is satisfied with punishment and penalty instead of restoring a community, addressing it, right? Resolving the conflict and rebuilding, okay? Because you don't do that with punishment and penalty. You never rebuild it, you never recover, and you don't restore. So why do we continue to choose capital punishment, penalty, and punishment when it never resolves anything? It's a lose-lose situation, right? So here's what we have come up with in our what I call mathematics, right? Our calculations. If you do a restorative justice strategy, you not only get to sit at a table with a mediator, specialized professionals to talk about the process, the journey. You get to understand the intent, the strategy, and understand the journey. And a lot of times, to understand the journey is half of the battle. Knowledge is very powerful. Where in capital punishment, penalty, and punishment, you don't get to address anything. Okay, you get told how to feel, and what to believe, what to think. And then you live your whole life a lie because none of the stuff you think is true, right? Only truth can set you free. So at least with restorative justice, you get the truth, and the truth sets you free. That's one component of restoration. Truth sets you free. The second component is you actually get the opportunity to see the process of being restored, the reparations of being restored. You get to see the process right then in real time, what it looks like to be restored. Now, some people say, well, death, you can never be restored from death, right? And that's where the conflict comes in for penalty and punishment. But in the reality, to see a journey of restoration, of effort, what we call a continuous, everyday